Welcome to the Bo and Luke Show, a podcast designed to inspire you to be better, know better, and do better. You can connect with Bo and Luke on social media at The Bo and Luke Show, or send us an email at fanfeedback@theboandlukeshow.com. Brought to you by Sound United. Without further ado, let's get after it.
Hey, Bo and Luke Nation. I am sitting here with Bo Brabo, and I'm your other co-host, Luke Carignan. And today, oh my gosh, what a treat. We have the co-founder and president of Bravely with us, Sarah Sheehan. Sarah has an awesome, diverse background in HR and as a sales leader, and she's super passionate about helping companies build healthy cultures. And prior to Bravely, Sarah was an executive at Gilt City, serving as the head of sales and leading a 65-person sales team, which I bet you have some great stories from that. And after spending over a decade and working in various HR roles at SiriusXM, Coach, and Gilt Groupe, now here she is making a big difference in a lot of people's lives, and we can't wait to dig into it. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're very excited to have you.
That we are.
Someone in true COVID times, somebody just opened the door to my basement and is walking downstairs making noise. So
totally
Yay.
Cool.
I got a little distracted. Dad, if that's you, just go back upstairs. I don't need you.
Dad doesn't want to make an appearance on the show. Guest appearance.
He probably would love it, actually. And you would find him way more entertaining than me, I guarantee.
What can he teach us?
He can teach you a lot, actually. He's taught
like everything.
A lot of what I'm going to talk about today, honestly, came from my father. So
really,
it was a great little fateful entrance there.
Yeah,
you can invite him back at any time. We don't mind.
Okay,
we absolutely don't mind. So Sarah, jump in and tell us a little bit first tell us a little bit about Bravely. And then I have a ton of questions that I want to ask you about, how Bo, myself, and our listeners can, just be better every day.
So I'd love to. So Bravely, we're a platform that connects employees to confidential coaching around whatever they're facing at work, which we usually refer to as the moments that matter. You both can probably relate to this. We all have things that come up at work, and normally we don't have access to the kind of support that we need. And we most of the time take it home, talk to the people in our personal lives, our friends, our families, our significant others, rather than talking to professionals who can help us work through what the next step is or how we should deal with something. And that's where Bravely comes in. We are a new pathway of support for employees so that in that moment, you can immediately log into our app and schedule yourself with one of our coaches. And then you can continue that relationship if the match works for you, and receive the support and guidance continuously throughout your career.
And so this is for all employees, correct? No matter what level you're at in the organization?
Yeah. I mean, the difference between, most of the time when people think about coaching, they think about executive coaching, which has been historically reserved for only those top tier executives who typically have happened to be men or white men at the top of an organization. And what we're doing is democratizing coaching by going employee-wide, population-wide. So all of our clients offer Bravely to every employee of their company. So that means regardless of your race, your level, your background, you now have access to the same coaching that someone at a senior level would at your company.
That's so cool. And yeah, that's been my experience with it too, is, when I thought of coaching, I immediately thought of executive coaching. And I'm so glad you started something like this, because my experience with it in the past is that just like you said, the executives that make like over $400,000 a year, they get a coach. And the people that are struggling to find their way and figure out their path get nothing. You just got to figure it out.
Well, I think it's super interesting as well, is that, in the past, those same people that were making $400,000 to get a coach, it was usually because they'd done something wrong. It's like,
really?
Give you a coach because people are complaining about you.
Yeah. I'll second that firsthand. I'll second that.
It's punitive. It's like, okay, we got to fix this here. And the opposite happens with Bravely. It's about being proactive and thinking through how you can set goals, develop your career, build skills, and it's very bottom up. So everything that we're talking about comes from that employee, and is driven. Again, when we go back and think about coaching, typically what we've seen in the past, you've been chosen, you've been selected, you're now going to be on this programmatic coaching for the next 12 weeks. And we see it very differently. We want that employee to feel empowered to reach out in their time of need about whatever it is that, in that moment they need support around.
So do you find that it's people that need it in like one-off situations, or are people using this as more a consistent development, right? To say like, hey, I'm going to keep this maybe once a week, a standing meeting to put together a plan, set these goals, make a system, work that system. How are people using it?
It's a great question. And I think it's evolved over time, because originally our hypothesis would have been the former, that people would be coming and dealing with something maybe even acute, right? I have this issue with my boss and I have a conversation tomorrow and I want somebody to support me around thinking through how to, deliver tough feedback to them or introduce a topic that I'm nervous about sharing. And now what we're seeing, and I honestly attribute this to the quality of our coaches as well. People go, they have a session, maybe there's the first session is about something that feels more time sensitive, or they're preparing for a performance review, for example. But the experience that they have is so positive that they want to continue that relationship over time. And as both of you know, it's like, once you get a taste of that, it's like a secret weapon for your career. And you want to be able to go back to that well and fill yourself up continuously.
I love that you touched on that too, because we've mentioned this on a few episodes, Bo, about like the peaks and valleys that people go through. And it's like with everything with work and life, it's really tough to maintain just a solid edge, throughout the entire year. It's things are either great or it seems like, they're not great. And I think that can be the difference, is having like committing to somebody to help you work through those valleys.
Yeah, for sure.
To level that out.
I've always been a supporter of coaching. I've had numerous coaches. I believe in them, even if you're paying. All the coaches I've had have been paid for out of pocket for myself, because I believe the return on the investment is huge and is well worth it. So the opportunity to get a coach through Bravely, if your company is a client of Bravely, is just huge. I would say, whether you think you need it or not, call them, use it, get them, get engaged with a coach that you find a good fit with, and the payoff will be exponential.
That's right. What blows my mind about the corporate world is that you look at like the NFL, right? They play 60 minutes of football in a game every single week. And to get there, they probably spend 35 to 40 hours of practice. Mm-hmm. We're professionals. We're in the corporate world. And it's the complete opposite. Guess what? We spend 40 hours a week in the game, and barely ever do we spend 60 minutes just practicing or actually having coaching. Mm-hmm. And it's just incredible that we all run as well as we do.
So true. And it's really, when I think back to when my co-founder and I decided to launch Bravely, it was really driven from a personal experience that he had, where a friend of his, just like we've all experienced, came to him because they had had an argument, I would describe it as, with their boss, and really didn't know what to do next. And because I had worked in HR and then led a large sales team at Gilt, a lot of people still came to me for questions that they had. And my co-founder, Toby, he's told this story 100 times, but he gave his friend guidance, but said, I want to connect you to my friend, Sarah, just to gut check. Maybe she has some other thoughts. And I absolutely had other thoughts, and they were even a little bit different than Toby's. But what it did is it sparked for him, and he was working at the time in healthcare on an urgent care app. And you would get on this app. If you were sick, you would describe your symptoms and they would either send a doctor to your door. This was pre like the telehealth, pre-COVID, everything being done over Zoom. Or eventually they would connect you with someone over a video chat. But what it sparked for him was like, we're able to access all of this in our lives, except when it comes to work. We can get support around anything. Everything can be accessible to us. But the place that we spend the most time, that causes us the most stress, we're left on an island by ourselves. And I think, Bo, you just saying that you paid for coaching out of your own pocket, like that stuck with me, because we made it intentional that our coaching would be confidential, meaning that we share anonymized insights back with our clients, but we never reveal the identities of the employees that are using us, because we want to create that safety. We want them to feel like they can come and have honest conversations, take the mask off, and be vulnerable.
That's the only way it's going to work, I think.
Yeah.
You got to have that level of trust and confidence in your that relationship between you and your coach. I think that's fantastic. Good job.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So Sarah, tell us about how you do it on a daily basis. So you've worked for a lot of great companies. You've worked your way up. You're doing something awesome right now with Bravely. And I want to zoom in. I don't want to know like how you've done it like over the decades. I want to know how you do it on like a daily basis. What does Sarah do to motivate herself when she wakes up in the morning? How do you carry that through? Maybe the answer is coaching. Maybe it's something else. What is it?
Coaching is definitely part of it. I'll tell you that. Things have dramatically changed in my life in the last 9 months. And I think probably everyone listening, anyone we know would say the exact same thing. So I think if you'd asked me 9 months ago, it would be an entirely different story. And the tale today is about understanding myself in a completely different way. So when COVID hit, I was 4 days back from giving parental leave after having my daughter. So I had psyched myself up to come back to work and was really stressed out about leaving my daughter, came back. And then 4 days later, we said, we're going to send everyone home. We were based in New York City and the numbers were rising dramatically and it just wasn't safe anymore. So now I didn't have childcare and I was a new mom and the co-founder of a company. My story is just one sliver of what people are experiencing right now. I think what's really just emerged for me is how resilient people are, including myself, because we've had to deal with a ton of change. And on top of that, a ton of stress. So I think when you say, how are you doing it every day? Honestly, Luke, I'm not sure how I'm doing it. No day is the same. I'm balancing my workload with my partner's workload. I have an 8-year-old stepdaughter that's doing virtual learning. I have a 13-month-old daughter who's been walking since she was 9 months and is into absolutely everything. And I feel like my whole day is about like preventing her from ending her life by getting into everything around the house. But what I was today doing an end of year call with my team, and I actually got really emotional talking about it. And I had to check myself because, once we start getting emotional, we can't control it. We start to feel embarrassed. And I just let myself be in the moment with them. And I was I was filled with such an enormous amount of gratitude, because my message to them was, thank you for just showing up, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Just thank you for being here, for trusting that the decisions that we were making, they may not be entirely understood in the moment, but that you knew that at least the intent behind them would always be coming from the right place. Mm-hmm. And that, you continue to give it your all when I know this was an incredibly challenging time, because it was an incredibly challenging time and still is an incredibly challenging time. It's not getting any easier for me. So, how I am approaching my daily life right now is and daily life is not normal. And I'm hoping that it goes back to normal on some level for all of us in the next 6 to 12 months. But,
Yep.
Right now, every part of me is trying to find gratitude in my life so that I can work towards the goal of my company, which is to support people on the other end. Mm-hmm. And what's really emerged for me is so much of what I've experienced over the last 9 months, being a new mom, going back to work. My partner is a Black man, and I watched him suffer in a way I've never seen him suffer following the murder of George Floyd. Wasn't able to work, wasn't able to focus. I've watched people on my team have to cancel their weddings, have to move because their partners lost their job. I myself have moved out of, my beloved city of New York to a town in Virginia, in Charlottesville, Virginia. Like, my whole life has been turned upside down, right? But what that has done for me as the founder of a company that supports employees is it's been the most incredible silver lining for me, because now I really understand all of the potential on a small scale, the potential things that people are facing and still having to get up and go to work every day and perform. And they're not founders of companies. Mm-hmm. They don't have kind of power or privilege that I have in terms of, being able to say, I'm not going to work these 3 hours and block my calendar. A director of marketing somewhere probably doesn't have the same luxury as me. I hope they do, but long-winded answer to just say, my perspective has just completely changed over the last 9 months. And that's what literally fuels me to jump out of bed every day, because I now understand how incredibly challenging life can be in the workplace.
Wow. That was a great response. I bet your staff really appreciated the vulnerability that you showed in that too, because they're probably feeling it. And sometimes, there's a time for tough love, and then there's a time just to show that you're human as well.
Yeah. I think they knew that it came out of nowhere for me, and that it was authentic. And, I don't think you can ever make a mistake in doing that as a leader for your team. It always feels in the moment like you're going too far. I literally could not control myself today. I started talking, and then I couldn't catch my breath or my words because the tears started, because I started thinking about the sacrifices that people have made on behalf of the company that I'm building. Mm-hmm. Alongside them. Can't do any of it without them, but they have just gone the extra mile. And in doing that, delivered the most successful year we've ever had as a company during the most challenging times of our lives.
Heck yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Sir, do you think that in time, so a lot of people, lots of people, right, over the past 9 months have had this earth-shattering changes in their life and the workplace because of the pandemic, and everybody's, just like you said, whether it's losing job, changing jobs, or you have to move because your spouse or partner lost their job and found a new one in another state, and all these things are happening. It would be unfortunate in the future that when crisis happens again, that if they forget this stuff, right? So do you think, even through what you may be hearing from your coaches and what they're dealing with, that people are really taking this and really looking at it as a time to learn, and that they can build resiliency in themselves, that if this happens again, which you just never know when crisis is going to hit, that you'll be better prepared for it the next time around?
Yeah. I think a lot of people are realizing their own strength and resilience. I think they're also realizing that the way that they operate doesn't work, which is also a critical realization. When it comes to leaders, I keep saying this, that if you are not leaning into showing up as a vulnerable leader in terms of sharing what your own challenges are, and being really upfront and honest about that, you won't successfully motivate your team or get them through this moment. And what I hope is, and all of this stems from the fact that we can no longer separate our personal lives from our private, or personal lives from our professional lives. And, I have to bring my daughter on almost half of my calls now. If somebody had told me, a year ago that I'd be bringing my daughter on a call with the New York Times as a client of ours, I would have laughed at you and said, there's no way. Yeah. Everybody there knows Mabel. They love her. If she's not on the call, they ask for her. This is a new normal, right?
Yeah.
But I hope that we never go back to pretending like our personal lives don't exist, because that is the workplace that I grew up in. Yep. And if somebody died in your family, you had to feel guilty about asking for the time off, and you barely got any time off, as an example. And then you had to come back and you were all better, everything's good, everything's great. That's just nonsense. And COVID, I feel like, has just broken all that down. And I mentioned my partner, who's just the strongest person I know. And there are layers to what goes on in our lives, right? COVID is one thing. Then, what happened with George Floyd is another. What's happening with the economy. There are just layers and layers and layers. And for us to pretend like those don't impact our work and our productivity is a huge miss for leadership not to start treating employees on an individual level. Because what I need, we did this exercise the other day, and there were a few of my team members on the screen with me, and I said, there are 4 women on this call, and there's 1 man. 2 of these women, 2 of us are mothers. 2 of the people on the call are people of color. But if you look at us individually, the 2 mothers there's a mother of a 5-year-old and there's a mother of a 1-year-old. We have very different needs. The 2 people of color, the 2 of you are not clumped together as you're going to just go over here to this ERG and all your problems will be solved, right? And then these 4 women, at various different levels of their careers and different aspirations and different skills that need to be developed, we all need to be looked at on an individual level. And I think that's the wake-up call right now for companies and their leadership to say, you are also an individual, and you should be talking openly about what your challenges are, what your areas of opportunity are for you, and then start really understanding what that means for each person on your team, and make sure your managers are trained to do that, or that you are in the hiring process getting a read for EQ, and if they have the ability to be empathetic. And if they don't hire them.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
Yeah, me too.
Who is that? You mentioned the New York Times. I think this guy was a famous New York Times journalist. Can't think of his name, but his famous quote was, if you want to get to somebody's head, aim for their heart. And through all the interviews he would do with Ronald Reagan and things like that, he would ask questions right off the bat that would go right to their heart. And he had a fascinating story and career. And that's always stuck with me through my career in leadership and sales, and just when in doubt, aim for their heart. And it's always worked for me. I don't think it's ever failed.
Leaders are afraid to do that because they think, if I open that door, then I'm not going to be able to drive performance. And the opposite is true.
You're right.
I have never done anything other than try and get to the bottom of what each person needs to be. And it's not an easy task. This is something that takes effort. It takes intention. And it takes an open willingness. And sometimes I think pushing yourself to be uncomfortable, to start to understand what makes each person on your team tick. But and some people on your team won't want to share, all the things about their personal life. And that's, I'm not suggesting that, everybody sit down and cry with each other every day. But, opening that door to let people know. And the way that I usually do it is by sharing my own experiences or struggles. so that people know that the door is open. And if I'm willing to talk about it with you, that you could probably come and talk about something similar with me.
See, that's amazing. And there's always been this, I think this distance between, all right. So leaders, they have their own expectations, but then they tolerate something else. And what they're communicating to their team, with words or not, is what they're tolerating. And then when people don't hit their expectations, which could be a totally different level, they get mad at the employee. They should really be pointing the finger at themselves and saying, well, this one's on me because this is what I tolerate. And I did not communicate that to these people. And I think it comes down to ego. A lot of leaders have a big ego and they don't want to admit that they've been tolerating subpar performance. But if you go to an employee and you say, hey, this one's on me, but we need to reset the bar now. The expectations, I've communicated that to you. You know that. I'm rooting for you. I'm your biggest fan and I'm going to help you get there. Can we go do this? Like the answer is always going to be yes. They're going to be motivated to do it. Otherwise, but I feel like people's egos get in the way and then it's just, Pip City for the employees.
One of the things that we hear all the time, this is where coaching can be so instrumental in helping people develop their communication skills. So I was telling you that I learned a lot from my father. So my father is a lawyer. He, my whole life, represented women and people of color in discrimination cases. I always joke that in the workplace, and I always joke that like the fact that I went into HR was just like,
wow.
I was not a fit. I never did anything wrong or inappropriate, but I was always like, because my father like made me study case law and stuff. So I was like, well, in this one case, but he taught me, he writes books on negotiation, mediation. He's a law professor now. And, he's talked and taught me a lot about an interest-based approach to conflict. And the premise of that is to, think about the needs of yourself and any other party involved. And it's the basis on which we've designed our coaching sessions. And what it's done for employees is unlocked for them, as you can imagine, a lot of times people come in and they're having this battle with their boss, and then they've created a story in their own mind about, people are just against me, or, I'm not given the opportunity for this reason or that reason. And when you help people understand and develop empathy for others, including their boss, and ask them to put themselves in their shoes and think about the pressures that they might have, and think through approaches that open up conversations rather than going in and making demands and sort of limit where you can go, it creates this, it's like the Oprah aha moment in everyone, because you would think it's so simple that it's a lesson we have all learned. Let me take a minute and put myself in the shoes of my boss right now and think about what they might be experiencing. It never happens. And so in your example, a lot of times it's that manager who needs to be doing that as well. But coaching really helps people start to orbit around this idea that it's not about them.
Great point.
You can be asked questions. I remember a coaching session where, the question was asked, do you want to be a leader in your company? It was like 45 minutes of somebody just telling me like all the problems and all the horrible things that were happening to them and how nobody like saw the truth and yada, 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 yada. One question. Do you want to be a leader in your company? Do you want to be a leader? Silence. Do you think the way that you are behaving right now embodies leadership? Changed everything. Changed everything. Do you think that if your wife asked you that question, that it would change everything for you? Probably not. If my friends or partner, after me coming home from work or coming upstairs from work now, was unleashing my stress, and they stopped me and said, Sarah, let me just ask you a question. Do you want to be a leader? I would probably like take something and throw it at them, right? But that's the magic of coaching. You're in there with somebody that has no skin in the game, that's there to only help you figure out your path forward, but not to coddle you the way that your friends and family would, to really ask you the tough questions that are going to cut through all the fat, because everybody wants to just come in and tell their side of the story. And I get it, we all get that, but
sure,
you need that authentic voice to say, hang on a second. What do you want? Who are you? And then it kind of like, it strips it all away, and people can start really opening up and seeing themselves. Because, self-awareness is, if you are not self-aware as a leader or even as an individual contributor, I mean, you can be a leader as an individual contributor, but if you're leading a group, even like if you are not aware of yourself and your patterns and what you do, and you're not willing to put that work in, you might get to the top, but in the world we're living in right now, things are changing and it's going to be a requirement.
You're right. And the people that are really successful, I can think of some of them on my mind right now. And by the way, when I say successful, I don't necessarily mean that they just reach the top echelon of whatever career they're in. They're just, they're successful personally and professionally, and people envy that. And there's a sense of calmness and peace that you can sense when you speak to them. They are really good at checking themselves. And like you said, being self-aware of asking those questions and then changing their behavior based on I guess, the way they look inside themselves, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm trying to articulate that.
Hard work. Bo, you've experienced a lot of coaching in your life. It's not, you have a bad therapist, for example, if you go in and they just agree with everything that you say, or they're not, I don't know if that's true. I shouldn't be like judging therapy, but they're not helping you sort of unpack the patterns or the mistakes. It's the same thing with a coach, right? If you're going in and complaining and they're like, that sounds bad, let's talk more about how you can get, climb up above this person or move them out of the way, or rather than saying, what do you think's making, like, triggering this in you, and why do you think this person's doing this, or asking those probing questions. No coach should ever be giving you advice. They should be helping you just understand what's blocking you so that you can keep growing.
That's very well said. That's very well said. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah.
Sarah, we don't want to take up too much more of your time tonight, but I do need you to tell people how they can get a hold of you, and tell all the, big time HR leaders that are listening to this podcast how they can get a hold of Bravely, because I can only imagine they're going to want it bad, like now.
I would love that.
Yep.
One thing I will just say is that the surprising thing about the last 9 months to me is that we've seen a huge increase, as you can imagine, in sessions around stress, burnout, but we have also seen consistent growth around people wanting to continue to set goals and develop.
Yeah.
So that has not changed.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where I think the opportunity lies right now, because people need more resources. Working from home, the change that we've all experienced, it's super challenging for the majority of people out there. Some people love working from home. Even if they love it, there's probably still something about it that's difficult. And so I think that's super exciting for me as the co-founder in Bravely, is just thinking about, I can still help people. I still want to grow my career. I'm still unbelievably ambitious, even though, I have like zero time to do anything. I still want to figure out like how I can continue to grow and get to the next level. So I think, that's just, I also just want to say that HR leaders have been tasked with solving all of the world's problems this year, and they deserve so much grace and gratitude for the work that they're doing. And like I said before, we're partnering with companies like the New York Times, Zillow, Yelp, Pinterest, and all of their employees have access to Bravely. And you can find us at workbravely.com, WORK My email is just Sarah, Sarah, at workbravely.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to connect with people. I love to hear people's stories and learn from as many people as I can.
Sarah, thank you. What you're doing out there just in society right now and in corporations around the country, it's needed. So thank you on so many levels. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for providing this to companies and especially the people that it'll touch. It's going to make a big difference. Must feel good.
Thank you both for having me.
Of course.
Anytime. Thank you.
I guess that's a wrap.
Tune in for a new episode every Thursday. You can subscribe to our email newsletter for information on upcoming guests, giveaways, and more. Rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to our sponsor, Sound United, for quality broadcast audio throughout Season 2.